Evolution of Sustainability, Love Your Mother broadcast. Welcome everybody that's come to join us. If you're not tuning in live, then thank you for following up on the recorded content post live production. The reason why I've felt inspired to hold this event is two things. Number one, we just had the COP 29 event, which was a bit of an awakening, I think, for many people that are, anticipating the outcome of this issue that we know as a climate crisis. And then it got me thinking, is this a crisis, or is this in fact the greatest opportunity humanity has had in a long time? And I've been following that question now for many, many, many years. As you know, I've been behind sustainability, supporting sustainability as a media entrepreneur. My wife and I published My Green Pod magazine and the website and various other things. We've been in the space of 15 years. I was very gung-ho about getting people to understand what sustainability was many, many, many years ago. Now, my mission is actually to ask a different question. And that's the question. What if this isn't a crisis? What if this is a great opportunity? But before we get into speaking to our esteemed guests, our wisdom keepers, our earth elders, our activists, our entrepreneurs, our disruptors, just amazing people, I am going to bring on a guest that is going to just give us a little bit of a personal sharing in terms of what she felt being at COP29, what vibe she got, how some of the news as it was breaking, how it felt to her, and somebody that was on the ground, that was in the mix of things. And we just want to have a heart-to-heart conversation about that, which will hopefully then lay out the opportunity for the rest of our esteemed speakers to talk about their whole worldview and their perspective on this thing we are calling a climate crisis. I'd like to welcome Amber Nuttall to our live stream. Amber, I'm hoping, there you are. Brilliant. Nice to see you. Thank you, first of all, for joining us, because I know everybody is super busy. It's a real pleasure. Amber is the CEO, or the founder, if you like, of Extreme Hangout. Extreme Hangout is one of the disruptive but fast-moving live event spaces that seems to be everywhere. Whenever there's a sustainability event, I often bump into either Extreme Hangout or Amber. It's amazing work that you're doing. So firstly, congratulations for everything you are doing. And thank you for joining us today. Amber, just tell us a little bit about Extreme Hangout, please, if you would.
Yeah, delighted, Jarvis. Thank you. And always a pleasure to have a chat with you, any excuse. So, yeah, really happy to give the time today. So Extreme Hangout, we started, as you know, at COP26 in Glasgow. And it was really an opportunity for us, we felt, to bring not only as part of an extreme and adventure sports movement, our community into the climate space. A lot of people in our community already feel like they're living in the front line of climate, because if you're a surfer, you're facing sewage and plastic pollutions. If you're a skier or a snowboarder or a climber, your glaciers have literally gone missing. Your snowfall is not arriving when you want it to. So there's that community that we wanted to bring into the climate conversation more broadly. And then also it was recognizing that there were so many young people who were quite rightly kind of going, what are you guys doing? Yeah, clearly that was not enough. And actually I felt a huge amount of shame that it was taking young people to mobilize so many others. And so when COP came to Glasgow, I was like, right, come on, we've got to go and do something. And something is absolutely what we did do.
You really did.
Yeah, we started this event, and it was a place for young people to feel like they could come and have their voices heard too. And I'm so delighted that we've been adopted by other marginalized communities from around the world as well. And we try and have some fun with it, Jarvis. We try and do things a little bit differently. because I don't see the point in repeating what everyone else is doing, because
Yeah.
we're not succeeding. But I would even say that still, having been involved in this now for 4 years, attended 4 COPs, we're still not succeeding. And I love the fact that you have reframed this question. Are we in the midst of a crisis, or is this our greatest opportunity? Well, you know, well, I don't know if you know, the character for the word crisis in Mandarin is actually made up of 2 other characters overlaid. And one means challenge and the other is opportunity.
Great.
So I think it's just a perfect reframing, Jarvis, and it's about time.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Thank you. So tell us about your personal experience being at COP29. A lot of controversy around it. Clearly, we didn't get the ultimate outcome that was required. But what was your personal heartfelt sense being there?
So I really enjoyed Baku as a city. I met some lovely people there. We got to work with quite a lot of the younger members of the COP organizing committee directly. And they were warm, they were welcoming, they were helpful, and they were so proud of hosting the COP. And I know a lot of us felt deeply uncomfortable that yet another petrostate was hosting our climate conference. It was beautifully on a talk I was listening to yesterday. It's a little bit like going to an AA meeting. And for no one to discuss alcohol. And in fact, why not invite all the alcohol brands to come and participate at the AA meeting as well? I mean, that's I think that's kind of the vibe that we're all feeling in the climate conversation right now. The people who are causing the issue keep showing up. But there's a part of me, it's like, we need to let go of that now, because they are going to keep showing up. Some of them are transitioning and coming up with some solutions and this, that, and the other. Not fast enough. They're not ambitious enough. But we've got to stop fighting every single battle at every single point. And we need to let certain things go and concentrate our efforts on the future and creating the future that we would like to see and welcoming people into that space. Not so much selling the doom and gloom anymore, because it doesn't sell and it doesn't mobilize people enough. We've got to stop fighting every single battle and every single... We're getting extra feedback here. I'm not...
No, sorry, go on, carry on.
What can I say? I mean, very literally, it was lovely that the green zone and the blue zone were closer to each other. There was a lot more flow of people between the two. I totally questioned, obviously the host nation gets to curate the green zone. Don't know what guidance they're given by the United Nations for that, but anybody who went into the green zone this year will have noticed that there were more development and building companies there promoting their new, I don't know, super swanky hotel up on the coast of the Caspian Sea than there were actually meaningful, progressive businesses who are in the green space. So that was very confusing and disappointing, if I'm honest, because it was the vast majority of the green zone this year. So I struggled to understand how countries even are allowed to use that. But I also am super cognizant of the fact that so many people turned around after COP28 in Dubai and said, no, we're not going to go to Azerbaijan. Indeed, they didn't. Or they certainly didn't show up in their usual numbers, and they didn't put the investment in showcasing their new technologies, their new businesses, or whatever it might be. So the Azerbaijani organizing committee, they had to pay for the green zone somehow. So maybe that's what they did. They just filled it up with companies that they could oblige, if you like, to participate. So it was a bit of a mess. And Jarvis, I felt a lot this year, real disappointment that so many people were like, yeah, you know what? We're going to skip COP29. We're going to go to COP30. We're going to go big.
Brazil.
And I don't know which bit of climate emergency that they were missing, which made them feel like they could take a year out.
Yeah, good point.
But for me, I'm like, guys, either this is an emergency and we're taking it seriously, in which case we need to show up all of the time for these COPs, because it is our only global stage, if you like, where we get to have these conversations and we all get to be together and drown out the noise from the fossil fuel industry. I mean, it's kind of giving them a green light by saying, yeah, I can't be bothered to show up in Baku.
It is.
I was actually personally really upset by the number of people that I know who didn't bother to come. And I realize that budgets are tight for people today. Jeez, all I can tell you is fundraising for the Extreme Hangout is not easy. But we try. And I really believe you want your voice heard, you need to show up. It's a bit like being on this call with you today. Any one of us could not show up, but then you'd miss the messages. You'd miss that opportunity to be part of that community and to collaborate and to... We're all looking for those golden tickets, hopefully, which are going to help take us that next step further. And the other thing that I would like to say as well, because I've been doing a lot of reflecting since COP, and I mean, two of the big things that are happening at the moment, obviously the results from the US presidential election, which an awful lot of people in our space are, well, I would say actually everybody in our space is deeply disappointed by. And then the fact that as we approach 30 years of these COPs, we're still losing effectively. So we're missing something somewhere. And ordinary people, and let's face it, it was the ordinary voters who voted for Trump. And it is ordinary people who turn away from us time and time again. And so I've been thinking about why. Why are they doing this? Why are we not resonating with them? And I do wonder if sometimes our language is too elitist, that there is a lot of, oh, well, we know best, and so you just should be doing this because it's the right thing to do. And I think we make a lot of people feel really bad about their choices. And again, that's not a way to mobilize people. And I've just come back from Belém because I went to do a recce out there, and it's a wonderful, extraordinary city. It is also a city where, whether you like it or not, your heart is super aware of absolutely everything around you. There is a lot of extraordinarily beautiful old colonial Portuguese architecture, and enormous sort of cathedrals around every corner celebrating the colonial era. And yeah, architecturally, sure, beautiful, but what do they represent and what do they mean to so many people out there? And I'm like, that's really tough. And that sticks in your throat. And around every street corner that I walked down, there were people sleeping in the street. The youngest I think I saw was probably a 14-year-old girl.
Wow.
I mean, this is a city which is full of real life trauma on a daily basis still now. I also learned that 74% of the tourists who visit northern Brazil go there for sex tourism.
Wow,
74%, Jarvis.
Wow,
That's not a
unbelievable.
small percentage somewhere. That is a vast majority. And when I was asked the question, why were these tourists coming? I was like, well, they must be coming to the Amazon rainforest. It's not sex tourism. And a lot of that involves underage children. And a lot of it's these mining camps and territories and where these oil drilling places are. I mean, but if we're not, so my point being, on a human level, how are these people in Belém supposed to care about the climate more broadly when there is so much pain and suffering around them and in their own lives on a daily basis? We need to address the humanity of all of us and all of our fellow beings on this extraordinary little planet that we're flying through space on.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that they're fed, that they feel safe, that they have somewhere to sleep, because perhaps their capacity to care and to get involved in the environmental movement and to make better choices that we're framing them as, then they will have the bandwidth to do that. Right now, I just think there are a lot of people, and I include in the United States too, there are a lot of people who are scared about where their next paycheck is coming from, whether their kids will have enough food. And at the moment, I feel that there's a little bit of too high, too mighty from the environmental sector, sort of telling everyone what they should and shouldn't care about.
Yeah, yeah, brilliant, Amber. Thank you so much. I honestly, it's such a heartwarming, beautiful way to open this broadcast. It leads us nicely into our next segment, where we're going to be speaking to some of those Indigenous elders and people that live in alternate, in other communities that are not living the same kind of Northern Hemisphere lifestyle that we are. So, Amber, thank you so much. You're always a joy to speak to. I'm sorry that we've run out of time so quickly, but thank you for joining us. If you want to connect with Amber, do check out Extreme Hangout. There's going to be lots of events that we're working on together next year. So I shall share more about those at the end of the show. But Amber, thank you so much. We're going to move over to a segment now to, thank you. We're going to move over to now to speak to, well, two amazing, what I describe as elders or wisdom keepers. Certainly OMMMbassador, who's officially an Earth Elder, and his partner Geraldine Patrick Encina, who is an Earth Timekeeper. So we have two of the most formidable, amazing activists, wisdom keepers, conscious living beings, spirited, passionate, amazing. So firstly, thank you for joining us. We know that you are literally just back from travels and it's early hours of the morning. You're both in Mexico. Thank you for coming to speak with us today, Mindahi and Geraldine.
Thank you for having us, Jarvis, in this wonderful time and this wonderful program.
Thank you, Jarvis.
It's a pleasure. It's so nice to see you both. Geraldine, may I start with you? Because your kind of your area of expertise, kind of Earth timekeeping. This particular segment is, I've titled it, and a question I'd love you both to answer from your perspective, but we'll be gentlemen and start with ladies first. What is the wisdom of nature that we've forgotten? What's the wisdom of nature that we've forgotten? And how do we reconnect with her? So from your area of expertise, because I think rhythm and time and, the natural rhythm is very important. But what would be your response to that, please, Geraldine?
Okay, so Mother Nature. First of all, ever since the beginning of time and space, she required 4 elements. She required fire and air and water and earth, partaking in the same quantity with the same intensity, and she required that they would be moving and swirling in such a way that the unfolding of events would actually begin. And the wisdom in that is that today, when we take a moment to think about who we are, where we come from, and where we're going, we need to think of ourselves within this swirling movement where there's nothing that is forever linear. There's never a straight line in nature. And there's always the opportunity to be co-creating. You're always co-participating as, a body that itself carries these 4 elements of life, and that must always be in movement, in the dance of the universe. So that we're not stagnant in our ideas, we're not comfortable in being just a passive watcher of what's going on. I will leave it as that.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Mindahi, thank you, Geraldine. I think just a passing comment, just in response to that. I mean, it's very clear that we are now living in a kind of man-made rhythm or man-made time cycle rather than the natural rhythm. And I know that both of you are hugely connected to natural rhythm and to Mother Nature's rhythm. Mindahi, the same question: what is the wisdom of nature we've forgotten, and how do we reconnect with her? What would your response be to that from your, well, just from your, the way that you live in the world and how you understand that deeper connection?
Yes, we are nature.
We are
Sometimes we
nature.
forget that we are just another species. And in the concept of life, we must play a role as a species to really understand that there is intelligence everywhere. And that we are living this beautiful planet we call Mother Earth, because this planet nurtures us. This planet is our mother. And but we are not alone. This planet got bigger family. So
Tell us more about the bigger family. What do you mean by that?
yes, we call, for example, the sun, Father Sun, and the moon, Grandma Moon, and other celestial bodies are related to this planet, like Venus, other planets in the solar system, but even beyond the configurations of other celestial bodies like the Pleiades and other Scorpio. So what it means is that if we see how the universe is expanding, how we are here as human species is in a memorial time, we are the reflection of those celestial bodies. We are the reflection of those sacred elements. We are the reflection of the stars, but also where we are born. So how we relate to life and to the death is in the cycles of life. We are just living this experience, but we are not here forever. But we need to take care for the future generations, for the future seeds. And for that, we need to honor our ancestors. But the ancestors are not just our families or the human families. Our ancestors are those stars, even those which we cannot see anymore, but we are imprinted, they are imprinted in us, because we are the reflection of those sacred elements in our own bodies and many other species. So to say that we have the need to breathe the sacred air. It's not just the oxygen, it's sacred. And that's why waters is not, in our mind, is not a resource. It's a sacred element of life.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about what you mean by a sacred element, because this is the stuff that I think that maybe most people have forgotten, yet it's the most crucial truth, right?
Yes, because it's a being. The water is a being, and it's been in the universe from immemorial time. If we don't respect, if we don't honor the waters, we are not respecting ourselves, because we are composed by these waters. And it's sacred because we treat waters in such a way that we respect, we don't stain, we don't pollute the waters, because that's a reflection of who we are. And look around you, look around us, how we appreciate and love the rivers, how we appreciate the clouds and the underneath waters that we don't see, but we feel them.
Yeah.
So that's the very reason we carry out ceremonies, rituals, in order to really understand that sacred connection, because it's a connection in the origins. It's not just the connection that we have nowadays. It comes from immemorial time, from the origins. That's why we need to treat the waters in a not just in a way that we respect them, but we honor them, we love them. In that way, we really need to produce behaviors. We need to produce public policies to really honor this element, as a sacred element, not just as a resource.
Lovely, beautiful. Geraldine, tell us a little bit about your understanding of time. Is what's happening now in the kind of, in the picture that most human beings are calling, a climate crisis? Clearly Mother Nature is speaking to us. I always say that if Mother Nature had a voice, how do you think she'd communicate with us? Well, she'd probably whisper in the wind, but if we didn't listen, she might shout a bit louder in other ways. But is this time, is this how it's meant to be? Is this what's meant to be happening right now? Is this what was predicted? And if so, why? What is it? What is its consciousness? What is it asking of us?
Yes. Okay, so what we have in Mesoamerica that is seemingly in other parts of the world as well, in other very ancient civilizations, is actual calendars that at least consider the last 26,000 years of existence of humanity. And there are various ways in which we can see, for instance, in today we have it in the Anthropology Museum in Mexico City. There is a huge stone that is beautifully carved. It's been wrongly called the Aztec calendar, but what it is, in fact, is the representation of 5 equal segments of time within those 26,000 years. Each one of these segments being 5,200 years. And what it more so does is to subdivide those 5,200 years in 5 equal segments of 1,040 years. And to further subdivide that into, 2 segments of 520 years. And then you can zoom in a little bit more and see 10 segments of 52 years. And you zoom a little bit more and see, okay, so we're seeing here the timing of what would be generation after generation after generation. And that there is versions of these generations that begin to degenerate in a way. There is a natural trend to erode the notion of who you are. And this is for a number of reasons, but definitely the last 520 years altogether completely span the time that we have been, let's say, totally invaded and taken over intellectually, also, not just taken over through the impact of a whole civilization coming from the West, as is Europe, taking over the minds and the philosophical thinking of the original peoples, but they actually took over the land. They completely began to destroy our perception of nature around us, naming every single cave as the devil, the places of the evil, when they were always the dwelling place of the sacred beings, the sacred representatives of the mother and father figures, the creators of life. So all of that meant that we became less and less connected to ourselves, less able to love our ancestors, love our parents, even love our mother figure, even, to the point of being choose to detach ourselves from whatever represents the womb of Mother Earth, be it a cave, be it a water body, be it our own mother, our own grandmother. Be detached also from our own body, our own skin, our own sexuality, our own dream world. And so we've been decaying as beautiful beings that we're totally aware of our role in the co-creation of life. And this is why we today are so easily pulled into these, other ways of thinking and of acting and of perpetrating, even against the very creators of life, against our very parents, the four elements of life as well, polluting them capriciously without any notion about the fact that everything will eventually come back, and affect us deeply in our psyche and in our own bodies and in our own newborns as well. So this was foreseen, and it was represented as the falling of the trees that are holding the world. And the beauty of that wisdom is that the remedy to the falling tree consists of song, the song for the ritual of the rising, the pulling the tree back to its feet. And there was the legacy of that ritual is in the hands of Maya people. They actually were told when in the year cycle they should be practicing the ritual of lifting a tree. This is May the 3rd. And this brings us to many cultures where May the 3rd and this beautiful lifting of the pole and the dressing of the pole in many colorful ribbons is something that we can see both happening, in Great Britain, I believe, and in Wales and in Ireland, as much as among the Otomi peoples. There's the same ceremony of dressing this pole with colorful ribbons on May the 3rd. And it is believed that upon the falling of this tree, everybody comes together because they have done their fasting. They have gone through that inner journey into that, that space, that intimate space of asking themselves, what is it that they can mend? And they do need to mend. We all need to mend our relationship to our mother, as well as to our father, our relationship to our ancestors, our relationship to our future newborns, because we will become their ancestors. And these newborns into the future will be sending us blessings so that we can unfold into the future with those blessings, or with thoughts of well, just ill thoughts about why did we continue messing it up, and these in quantum physics, we could say that that is a possibility, that we are already receiving that ill thinking or those blessings and those thank yous from our future children. So we do need to go into that inner space where precisely the future and the past and the present are blended into one instance, and coming to terms with who we are, what our responsibility is, and be thankful for the opportunities that we have every single day to align to Mother Earth's dream of a beautiful creation.
Wow, I mean, I'm totally moved. I hope that other people watching will feel that. It just feels so true. And what it reminds me of, Geraldine, and firstly, thank you. Such streams of wise consciousness flowing through you that I can really feel it. What it reminds me of is just how disconnected we've become from the truth. It's partly saddens me, because I know within my being there's an emotional part, there's a physical part, there's a mental part, there's a spiritual part. Spiritually, I'm enlivened. Emotionally, I'm saddened. Physically, who knows, because I haven't moved yet. But Mindahi, you have become an elder in the Indigenous community. You've pulled together a bunch of beautiful wisdom keepers from all around the world. Geraldine, I know you're very, very much a part of that network as well. What is it that we, first of all, was the disconnection part of the plan in terms of what Geraldine has just said? Was that part of the plan so that we could grow? And then secondly, what do we need to do now in order for us to get back into the frequency of love that is held by our ancestors, by our multi-dimensional beings, that being the earth, the planets, the all sentient beings, all non-sentient beings? How do we reconnect with the love? I'm sorry if I'm using very simple language, because I'm sure it's much denser than that. But please, Mindahi, show us the way. Show us the way, please.
Yes. Beginning with that we are here for a purpose as human beings, and that we received the original instructions, so to say. And those original instructions are based in the law of the universe, in the law of nature. It's beyond the this rational way of thinking, because we are more than matter, we are more than thoughts, we are energy. And that's the reason we need to rethink our place in the world. Accordingly, with our elders, there was a time when there was more harmony with nature. We still keep that in the original nations, in the so-called indigenous communities, that sacred relationship with nature, with the cosmos. But it was some thousands of years ago, some say like 13,000 years ago, around the Ice Age, when some people began to think differently. Instead of taking care of life, some people began to take over. As it's also in the prophecies, it's also in the writings, in the codices, in the almanacs, that some people began to go away from the original instructions and began to dominate and exert dominion over others. That's what we call now colonialism, or whatever it's called. It's just to the dominion or domination way of being, thinking, and acting. And that's the problem. That's why we have gone away, not just the ones that have gone away from these original instructions, but we are all affected, because it's not them. And whatever is happening there affects us. And whatever we are also holding through that sacred relationship with nature, with the cosmos, is also affecting others. And that's why we are continuing to live in this time and space. And that's why we are also seeing this, what we call a multiple or complex crisis, because it's not just material crisis, it's a spiritual crisis. It's the crisis in our thoughts. That's why we have been receiving these messages like, think beautifully, because we need clean ideas. We need to think beautifully in such a way that we remember who we are.
I love that. Think beautifully. Yeah, beautiful.
And so at that time, let's say we had more languages, more peoples, and but we are losing languages, we are losing species, we are losing possibilities of interacting. And now we have this biocultural erosion, because the culture and also biodiversity intertwines, they come together. We don't think that they are separated. They are together. We cannot think about biodiversity without thinking in our culture, because that interaction is what life is about. When we think, also we affect And when we affect, sometimes it's positively and negatively. It depends how we are directed. So we have lost so many possibilities of coming together, but at the same time, this crisis is bringing us that possibility again, so that we need to rethink our place in the world. And now we know that we are losing not just species, but we are losing languages. And that's very sad, because in losing those possibilities, we are losing life ourselves. But there is something new. There is something new because there is always something new. As we need to honor the past, we also need to honor the future. And the mystery is that we cannot live in the past. We cannot live in the future, but in between. That's the present moment. And that's the beauty of life. And in living in between, give us the possibility to rethink and act and be responsible and to live in reciprocity, reciprocity with our species, with others. And rethink our place in the world is to also to behave. We need to behave because some traditions, because of that, the dominion and domination way of thinking, we might think that we are the most intelligent beings in this world. Are we really intelligent? What kind of air we are breathing? What kind of waters we are drinking? What kind of food we are producing? So let's think about that, our place in the world. And we need to regain not just the individual me, but we have to go from me to the we. And in that way, we need to also to be responsible in not just in the individual way. We need to gain again that what we call collective dignity. And in that, how we are going to do that? Well, everything begins with ourselves, with our families. We need to bring back the families again. And in bringing back the families, we also strengthen the communities where we live. And when we know about the communities, I'm not talking about just the human agency. I'm talking about the communities as a whole, the ecosystems where we live, where we are born. That's our place, that's our home, our communities. And then we can regain that collective dignity because we are the rivers, we are the sky, we are the rocks, we are the springs. We are all what exists in the world. How we treat each other, how we treat the springs, how we treat the waters we drink, is who we are. That's the reason we need to go from the me to the we, once again, and then flourish again and again. So that's why we think about the future generations, the future seeds, in such a way that we are delivering something, not just thoughts, but actions, and recover our place in the world, just as another species, not the peak of the creation. We are not. We are just another species, and we must behave.
Beautiful, absolutely. I mean, it's so lovely to hear. You know, when truth is spoken, we feel it. We don't necessarily even need to hear it; it's felt. So thank you both for that. I do want to continue with you both because, you know, firstly, I think it's rare for communities in our in our neck of the woods to get to hear and connect with such wisdom. I want to certainly get this broadcast out to as many people as possible, even if it's not in this live moment, but certainly afterwards. What are the messages? That's not quite the correct question. What is the earth, in your opinion, asking us to do in this moment where she seems to be, if you like, shouting in the only way that she can? What is she asking of us? I understand the simplicity that we are connected. I understand that, you know, we need to think beautifully. We need to act purposefully. We need to remember sacred values. I get all of that. I really do. It's deep within my heart. But for those people that don't quite understand that might not have a ritual based practice, that might not have spent the time going within and connecting with that inner voice, that inner wisdom, or even the intelligence and the frequency that the earth is offering us to us all the time. Those people that aren't hearing it, those people that are just too busy getting caught up in this man-made holographic, you know, construction that we've created through the narrative and the information. What are the messages that you feel that the earth is asking of us right now? Joadine or Mindahi, please, from both of you, what are you hearing, and what do we need to be listening to?
You know, Mother Earth is suffering, is telling us so many things. We got to listen. No, we got to listen. What is going on? What is happening? And we live in prophetic times, but this time prophecy is not going to happen just because it's going to happen. We need to act, and what we call the unification process, and it's happening because we need to come together. The problem is so huge that we need to speak to each other once again, and to feel each other, and to also to come again in unity. And we call that unity in the diversity because we are all important. But at the same time, we are just having this beautiful opportunity. It depends on us if we take it or not. But whether we like it or not, change is coming. That we call the new dawn is coming because we live in the cycles of life. And we know that the new dawn is coming because there is so much problem around the world, why we are here in this world, what kind of creatures we are. And some people think that the technology is going to solve our problems. Technology is just a way to support. And it depends how we use technology, how we use science. But more than information and knowledge, we need wisdom. What to do with that information, what to do with that knowledge, once again. Because many of our thoughts are very repetitive, even, allow me to say, evil thoughts. So we need to really constrain those thoughts, and just that's why think beautifully is so important. Because whatever begins with an action, with a good action, it begins with thinking. Then you carry out that action. And that's why we need to go from the hope to the action, because sometimes hope restrains us to act, and this is the time to act. So the new dawn is telling us that there is an energy that is happening in the universe. It's like the train we have been waiting for. We have the chance to get on the train or not. But we as human beings, we have to support each other and support other species, because other species are us as well. So this is not just about us. This is about life. This is about transcendence. What kind of new dawn we want depends on us if we do the work.
Mm.
There is an
I-
analogy from some people from that we are sharing with some other earth elders. This analogy is like if we were flying in an airplane. Depends on us if it's going to be a soft landing, hard landing, or crash landing.
Yeah.
But
You know what? Sorry, Mindahi, please don't let me cut you off. Sorry. Carry on.
just to say that we have the beautiful opportunity
Yeah.
to put our minds, our actions, or our beliefs once again in service of life.
Beautiful. It's it reminds me of a phrase I use a lot. You know, it could be so simple. It might not be easy, but it could be very simple. Thank you for that. So beautiful, Geraldine. Would you like to build on that or add from your perspective and your understanding and your wisdom?
I would just add to everything that Mindahi has beautifully said, that in that change of attitude, we need to slow down. We need to observe the pace at which we step into life and all that we need to do routinely, and just watch what is driving us and pushing us to be in this really fast pace where we feel that we are going to get much more done and we're going to be actually contributing to the acceleration of tasks that will make us be more successful and achieve more in less time, etc. And is that a fallacy? Is that maybe a completely misunderstanding of what our real role is in this co-creation of life? So stopping, slowing down, taking time to see how we might be better syncing in with the rhythms of nature, with the rhythms of ourselves, our own circadian rhythm. How much sleep are we really getting? How much time to regenerate our own cells, to recalibrate ourselves are we giving to ourselves? How much of the function of our organs how much is in sync with the natural rhythms, say for women around the moon? How, just watching the unfolding of all of these processes within our own bodies is something that we have not been trained to do. Sadly, not even breathing, not even that, one breath, and what it means in terms of being completely interrelated with plants that are providing the oxygen around us, and how replenishing that one breath, that one inhaling can be, and that one exhaling can be. And what is it that is uncomfortable in our own bodies? The numbness that we might have completely come to terms with, sadly, to be numb in our own bodies. So I would invite people to make a self-check more often, and to teach the children around them to do that, and do it as part of the daily routine in life, and to wake up an hour earlier and see the sunrise, and stop for a minute at noon, and again look for that sunset, and what happens at twilight, and where's that shining star we call Venus that might be completely lost in the skyscape of the urban areas. So there's so much that we can enjoy in just, the little things, those little flowers that are so silently just showing up for us, or not for us, for themselves and for life. And that we should be thankful and appreciative of those beautiful little moments. We will be much happier people when we humbly do these little exercises of being grateful for the manifestations and expressions of life that remind us about all that is happening within our bodies to keep ourselves alive. And so, yes, let's remember that we're co-evolving. And isn't it beautiful that we are the living dream of the universe and of Mother Earth and Father Sun? So again, every single day we have a chance to be that bright, beautiful being that Mother Earth dreamt.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. And we are coming close to the end of the session, but Mindahi, did you want to just add anything to before we close? And thank you so much for bringing such wisdom.
Yes, we are in a very special moment as humans, because we have the big capacity, we have the big opportunity to rethink and to act and to come together once again. So, yes, we need to go from competition to collaboration. And to go from competition to collaboration, it takes a lot. It takes an attitude to become we, not anymore the me, just the me, but the we. So in thinking about that, we need to go beyond this anthropocentric thought. Actually, we need to still keep that anthropocentric thought, but we need to go beyond that. We need to go to cosmocentric, biocentric thinking, because we are more than humans. We are more than humans. And in that case, we need to go even beyond that, what is called in the sustainability world, the intergenerational equity, because we always think, and it's important to think what kind of world we are delivering to future generations. And I use that not just the humans, but future generations as a whole. It's important, but let's think also the other way around. What kind of future generations we are delivering to this world, to this cosmos, to this life? So that's the key point, and that's the beauty of life. And we need to be more humble. And again, we have the big opportunity to come together in this sync with this time and space that we're living in. Hamadi.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Everybody that's watching and tuning into us post the live broadcast, I invite you all just to take a big deep breath and just allow yourselves to be awakened by the wisdom and the sharing from both Mindahi and Geraldine. You know, these are two individuals that when I met them, you know, they immediately touched my beingness just by their very presence. There are people on this earth today that walk the earth with connection, with love, with unity, with wisdom, with indigenous sacred roots and understandings. And for that, we praise you both as the yin and yang, the masculine and the feminine versions of spirited beings having an earth walk. And by the looks of things, you are enjoying it and at the same time conscious that there needs to be an awakening. So for that, I praise you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to inviting you both to the UK in June for our events that we'll be holding in partnership with Extreme Hangout and the P Awards again. So I hope you can be in the UK, and everybody that's listening and watching can come and meet you in person, and we'll have another conversation at that time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you.
Thank you.
We love you too.
Great. So Charlotte, I'm going to invite Charlotte into the space now, who is my co-host. I think that it's fair to say that what we've just experienced, Charlotte, is perhaps, I don't even know how to put it into words, but an insight to how it can be if we are dedicated and committed to unhinging ourselves from this man-made kind of problematic, you know, world that we're living in at the moment. And if we can unhook ourselves perhaps from that framework and allow ourselves to, dare I say it, merge back into the, you know, the wider picture, then it feels like it could be a really beautiful place to be. But what were your takeaways from that, Charlotte?
Yeah, Jarvis, thanks so much. Gosh, that was wonderful. I feel like so many phrases and ideas are ricocheting beautifully around my mind, but I think I really enjoyed this invitation to think about our bigger family and that call towards the end that every day we have a chance to be that beautiful being that Mother Nature dreamed in all of us. It was just such a lovely invitation. So yeah, I think this ecosystem approach, this thinking of ourselves as more than human, of knowing that we are the mountains, the rivers, the springs. And I don't know, perhaps as we move towards some of the later segments that we're going to be unfurling today, that real question about, are we as intelligent as we think we are? If we are failing to notice that these beautiful assets on which we depend are much more than assets, the water, the clean air, actually they're sacred elements. I found that such a helpful invitation to consider what would intelligence look like if we really honored those sacred components that we live alongside and we remembered that we were more than human.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And for those of you that haven't met Charlotte and I met recently. I was invited actually to go and speak at one of your events at the Blue Earth Summit. Charlotte and Tessa, you're going to meet later, and are, you know, running this amazing kind of conceptual, inviting event space called Uncomfortable Conversations. You can check it out at Uncomfortable.love. And, you know, I mean, they are amazing. So do look into what Charlotte and Tess and others are up to. We are going to move into our next segment now, which I think is actually a really nice segue, Charlotte, because, you know, what you did so beautifully at the event that I attended with you was very much look at culture and, you know, how different parts of society might not be as included in the conversation as perhaps they should be. I know should's the wrong word, but could be. But we're going to look at, before we do that, we're going to look at various aspects of culture. We're going to invite into the space our culture representative. So Charlotte, with love, I'm going to hand over to you because you're running this session. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for bringing your, beautiful feminine insight and wisdom to this event. And I shall love you and leave you and see you back here shortly. So Charlotte, over to you.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much, Jarvis. So we are now entering a wonderful segment where we get to explore, well, how can we change ideas and thinking, and how can we use some of these vital components of our culture to play and think differently. So we're going to be talking about the media, we're going to be talking about fashion and about film, all sorts of different ways that we can influence and change culture, change the conversations we're having. At one point in the previous talk, we were asked to think about, well, maybe we have become out of tune with ourselves and our bodies. And I always think of culture as an opportunity to influence that. So on the screen now, you should see all of the speakers that we are about to hear from, who are going to bring to life some of these themes around media, around fashion, and around film. I'm going to begin with Katie Hill, and we're going to start talking about kind of the role of media. I'll then pass to Ryan and to Anna, who will bring to life some of their thinking about how we influence culture in their work. And then I'll close with Stuart, who will take us to what the role of fashion and clothing might be in really influencing culture. So firstly, Katie, can I bring you in? So I'm going to be asking you all some big questions about culture in the spirit of everything that we have just heard. And for those of you who don't know Katie, she is a pioneering journalist and editor-in-chief of the UK's most broadly distributed sustainability lifestyle magazine. So I know, Katie, you're thinking a lot about how we can change the way that we live. And I would love to ask you how you personally are interested in influencing culture in your work, and any examples you've seen of where you've really seen that culture change beginning to happen.
Yeah, of course. I think, hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here. It's a really tricky one, this, for me, because this word influence, it doesn't sit well with me. My background's in independent print journalism, so influence is something that I kind of want to avoid because the press has got a really bad history of influencing via domination and via control and via, in a very linear way. So I'm quite sensitive to this thought of influence. But I was listening to this interview on Radio 4 with somebody called Professor Andrew Hartle, and he made a really good point about the media. So for background, those who don't know about Professor Hartle, his story is that he was outed in the 90s, which seems ridiculously recently, but he was outed by a Sunday tabloid, and that led to his suspension and then eventually his dismissal from the RAF. And he was asked in this interview if there was anything that he'd like to say to the editor of that Sunday tabloid. And he said, he sort of paused for a minute and he said, it was a really clever headline, but who did it help? And that really, really resonated with me, because it's something that I've always felt we should be thinking about whenever we're uncovering, telling, sharing stories in the media. Who are we helping? And I think it's something that's got lost if it's ever been there, because the point for me of the media, when it's working in a fair and democratic and pluralistic society, is to less influence culture in that linear way that I was just talking about, and more to be in a relationship or a dialogue with culture, so that the media and culture they're kind of reflected in each other in a really healthy way. And then we can draw attention to issues that people might not know about, and then start a dialogue, engage different perspectives, look at solutions. And the climate crisis is just a perfect example of that. When we started My Green Pod, it was over a decade ago now. The mainstream media wasn't talking about climate change. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't like, the language was exclusive. It was sciencey. It was dry. They had, there were NDCs, LCAs, SDGs. It totally turned people off at a time when climate denial was a thing. It was very real. And The Economist, Kate Raworth, she made a great point that Christianity, it wasn't spread by the Latin tomes that monks were copying out. It was spread by these vivid stained glass windows and churches and murals and frescoes. And they were the things that really brought the story of Christ to life. So we need to be sharing, more vivid stuff, like get away from the science and the data, because that's how we connect. We connect through stories. We connect through understanding that the climate crisis is a humanitarian issue. It's a gender issue. It's it's an equalities issue, and we just need to start those conversations, and that's what influence should be. And it goes right back, doesn't it, to the very beginning of 1644, I think it was, that John Milton was saying. He was talking about press freedom a long time before the Licensing Act was abolished. And he was talking about this marketplace of ideas, and he was talking about open and unlimited access to information and opinions, and that, we're reasonable, rational people. And if we've got access to information, it'll be all right, we'll make good decisions, but we need that free and open access. And then this open marketplace of thought, the best ideas will prevail, and people will start finding solutions to the biggest problems that we've got, and we need to trust people more. And so this thought of kind of influence, I think it is just more about sharing different perspectives, talking about, giving voices to people who haven't got voices at the moment, that haven't got the platform, and just having a duty of care, really, and responsibility. And these, things like editorial integrity, they exist now. We understand more that we need to be kind of a bit more responsible about the way we report on things. And as consumers of the media, people are getting more savvy. They're aware that there's an agenda, corporate or ideological. Often there is an agenda to what's being written and what they're reading. So yeah, influence, I think, should be a two-way street. And I hope that we're helping to some extent with that, in just sharing the stories of people that are being affected by climate change in a way that is opening people's hearts and touching people and allowing them to connect and feel the reality of it, rather than trying to understand the data.
Oh, Katie, I love so much that you've managed to bring to life in that distillation. I think there's something about, I noticed the words you used about sciencey and dry, and then when you talked about, well, actually, how can we communicate with people in a way that they will feel that they'll connect to it differently. And I just love this introduction, this idea of dialogue. So where are you seeing people in the media do that well, or what have you been proud of that My Green Pod's been able to do to kind of create a bit of that dialogue, to give voice to people whose voices aren't normally heard? I'd just love to hear a flavour or a couple of examples.
Yeah, of course. There's something that I was really passionate about, was the synthetic polymers in cosmetics. So there was a massive public mandate to get plastics out of everyday products, and we saw it with the Greenpeace petition that was handed to government. It had 350,000 signatures, I think, and that was the micro beads ban. And there was this huge public mandate to get rid of plastics in cosmetics, and yet, despite that, the manufacturers, they carried on doing it. They just got bits of plastic that were smaller than a micro bead. So now cosmetics are full of things called synthetic polymers, which are essentially liquid plastics, and they're rife. They're everywhere. They're in shampoos. They're in all sorts of products, and people are using them, and they'd be horrified, because we know that public opinion is against this. We know that people don't want it. And they're just doing it because they can. And so personally, this is it's a bit of a personal thing for me now, because it's, I think people need to know the truth. They just need, as soon as they know the truth, then they get to make the decisions, don't they? So we're going to carry on reporting on it as much as we can. We're sort of engaging with Greenpeace, and we're engaging with some of the organic pioneers in the UK that are making products that don't have these awful, that you don't need to put them in there. And it's, it's evident from the fact that manufacturers have often an organic version and a non-organic version. The organic version doesn't have them in. It's just as effective. It's just 10 times the price. So they can do it. They can make these formulations. They're just not doing it. But if we can turn public opinion, we know that once that tide turns, manufacturers respond. They have to, because they don't want to go bust. They want to sell products. So if people understand what the problems are, they can vote with their wallets, and then they can, manufacturers should start turning. They should start changing the products that they're offering to satisfy this demand. So that's one example. I mean, like, we know David Attenborough, that brilliant Blue Planet 2, I think, what was that, 2017, wasn't it? And 88% of people who watched that said that they changed their behavior afterwards. So that's an example of how the media can change public opinion. It's just awareness raising, and that's how it should be. Less influence and more education, I think, and just trust people to make those decisions once they're equipped with all the information.
Yeah, I love that. Katie. Thank you for emphasizing these pieces around trust and for breaking down that difference between influence, dialogue, education. Stuart, I'm going to come to you because I think this is a really nice segue in, actually. And I suppose before I do that, Stuart, the things that have really come to life in Katie's speech is this idea of so Stuart, we're going to go to you and we're going to talk about fashion. I know Stuart's got a bit of background noise, so I hope that that's going to be okay, but we'll test it in a second. For those of you who don't know Stuart Trevor, he is the founder of All Saints, and he's now on a mission to try and create what the most sustainable brand in the world might look like. Really focusing on this question, well, what if we never made new clothes again? So Stuart, tell me about the role you see that fashion plays in influencing culture and what you're particularly interested in. If we use Katie's lovely word about this dialogue with people through culture, talk to me about that in your world in fashion.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm in an event. I'm in a sound booth, but I'm not. I think there's noise in the background. But can you hear me?
We can hear you lovely. Keep going.
Oh, great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
cool. Yeah. I really, listening to Katie, very, it resolutes with me 100% because, you know, the biggest issue that we have, I mean, with fashion business, the fashion world, the thing is that, you know, people used to ask me all the time, why are you so obsessed with fashion? And it's not that I'm obsessed with fashion, but, you know, when you get up in the morning, the first thing that you do is you put on clothes, and what you put on defines you as a person and how your day is going to be. If you look great, then you will have a great day. If you look interesting, you will have an interesting life. And it's the same with food. If you eat healthy food, you will have a healthy body, you know, so it's really relevant, but it's kind of shocking that the largest, or the world is basically run by these large, huge billion-dollar businesses, huge billion-dollar corporations, and they are brainwashing us via social media into believing that we don't have enough and we need more. And everybody has a wardrobe full of clothes that they don't wear. And it's kind of, I was asked again and again, because I'd done, you know, 10 years at Reese, and then I did, you know, founded All Saints, and they're both global brands. And then I exited in 2007 when a business partner sold out to a larger corporation, and they wanted to produce everything in China. Well, I was doing 50% of the production in the UK, 20% in Portugal, 10% in Italy, and a tiny amount in the Far East or in India, things that I couldn't make in, you know, the UK. To me, it was very important, and that's the reason why I exited All Saints in the end, is because I didn't want to move everything to China, because I didn't believe that was the right thing to do. I thought it was important to keep, you know, support industry closer to home. And now, with hindsight, they're all trying to get production back to the UK. And there's a huge issue in the world right now with, you know, social media brainwashing people into believing they don't have enough. You know, you need to buy more and spend more, and it's really important. I started this mission about 2 years ago, and I do different talks and events, and I'm keep publicizing it. A year ago, when I announced that I was going to launch a clothing brand that doesn't produce any clothing, people thought I was insane. They came to me like, you know, friends of mine that have been in the industry for years were like, you know, are you crazy? How is that going to work? How are you going to? And I'm like, what do you mean? Where are you going to get the stock from? I'm like, oh, mate, the last thing you have to worry about is where I'm going to get the stock from. Every single brand in the world has warehouses full of stock that they don't know what to do with. So my idea is to encourage those brands to either give me or sell me, like, you know, their inventory that they don't know what to do with, even if it's, you know, returned, damaged. I can repair it, do something interesting with it. And the most important thing of what I do is it has to be fun. It's not good enough just to say, oh, this is a sustainable brand, please buy it. You've got to make it really interesting and really cool and fun. And that's the only way you're going to get young kids. I mean, my kids have eco-anxiety. They don't wear anything apart from vintage. There's a social divide amongst them and their friends. the ones that carry on buying from fast fashion, and the ones like my kids that don't wear anything but vintage. And it's not just because their mum and dad are the founders of All Saints. I mean, they've raided our wardrobes years ago. It's because they care about what is going on, and they can see that it's awful. I've got my daughter's friend turned up and said, "Oh, I've got this new puffer from Supreme. It's great." And your dad'd love it. And she went, "My dad'd hate that. I'm sorry, but you know, I go away. I'm not interested in talking." There is a social divide now. What we need to do is keep pushing the message that there is an alternative, and it's not, as Katie said, we're not. I don't want Primark to go out of business, H&M to go out of business. They're employing, you know, billions of people are employed in the fashion industry, even in Bangladesh or whatever. We just want them to make things in a better way and use more natural fibers. I've challenged the big sportswear brands like Puma and Adidas. I was giving a talk in Chamonix, and we stood on a glacier, and I explained to them that this glacier is about 250 meters lower than it was 3 years ago. And if they don't believe that there's an issue with climate change, then you know, have a look at this, and you can see live, and you know, there's no disputing it. And I talked to them about the first one of you that takes up my challenge to do a sportswear line made from natural fibers and forget polyester, because there's only one reason that they all use polyester. They come up with all these bullshit strap lines like it wicks away the sweat and all that. It's absolute rubbish. Polyester is carcinogenic. You would not wear polyester underwear. No one would wear polyester underwear, but your skin is the largest organ on your body. Why would you even put a single piece of polyester on your skin? You see all these football players running around with tit tape because they have a reaction to polyester shirts, but they won't do it because there's only one reason that they use it, and it's because it's cheap. And the problem is that, you know, it all ends up going into landfill, and it will be thousands of years before it biodegrades. So we just need to keep pushing the message. We need to make people aware of how horrendous all this fast fashion and these super brands, they're just as bad. Burberry, it all came out about a month ago that 27 million pounds worth of clothes and fabric they burn. It's just disgusting. So we need to keep pushing the message and let everyone know. And I'm amazed that in a year and a half since I launched my business, it's unbelievable how the great guns now. I have so many customers buying from a clothing brand that doesn't produce any clothing. It's like that we are starting to worry about where are we going to get the stuff, because people want the same sort of things. So we're running around like crazy trying to get hold of it. People love it. I never really imagined that we would end up with, you know, we've sold over 1,000 pieces in the last year to different people that come online. And you got to remember, most of it is pre-loved, and we're not selling it like discounted or cheap. We don't do any discounts. We give people a slight discount in order to mine their data so that we get, you know, them as a customer. And then people just, the minute they buy one thing, they come back and they buy more. So there is a huge change in the world, and hopefully, you know, we're going to help spread that message, and the next generations are going to come on stronger and even more interested in, you know, doing something more positive for the planet. That's really important to me.
Thank you so much, Stuart. I just want to bring through some of the threads, maybe, excuse the pun, that I heard while you were speaking. This lovely thread about kind of actually where are these clothes made, and telling that story of when we move production and we outsource it and we move it far away. What are they made of? What are the natural fibers that we're really thinking about? How are we thinking about what's good for our body, which is where our clothes are interacting? And then I really love this theme that you wove through of this needs to be fun, and, you know, remembering maybe that fashion is an art form and it's about human creativity and it's become attached to our identity. So how can we really kind of bring that in? I guess before I move to Anna and to Ryan, who are going to talk about this thread from a different perspective, I wanted to follow up on that piece of how do we change a culture around what is enough? So I think it's clear to me that your kind of playful zest and your challenger brand identity is already beginning to influence some of the big players, is showing that there's a movement and an appetite. When you ask yourself that really big question of how do we help people realize they actually do have enough, do you have any just short thoughts on that before we move to Anna and Ryan, how we can change a culture around enough?
I think we just need to keep pressing. I mean, somebody asked me very briefly when quickly as I was at Cannes Lion Festival of Creativity, where I was speaking in earlier on this year. They asked me backstage, and I don't know where it came from, but I was like, suddenly came up with, you remember when we were kids and we didn't have all this social media, we didn't have fast fashion brands, we used to have favorites, we all had favorites. Why don't we go back to when we had favorites, like clothes that you actually love? And then I watched a podcast with Stephen Bartlett, and it had I think his name's Jimmy Carr, the comedian. He's a kind of crude comedian, but he said something that really impressed me. He said there is nothing that you can buy in a shopping mall that you will treasure in 10 years' time. And he's 100% right. There is nothing that you could buy in a shopping mall. Also, who wakes up in the morning and goes, I can't wait to go to Primark and buy 2 T-shirts for a tenner? No one does. Let's just go back to when we had favorites, buy things that are really beautiful. Vivienne Westwood used to say that we should buy less, buy better, choose well, and wear it for life. And that's what we should be doing. That's what I encourage people to do. And I think and the message is getting through. The difference I've seen in 1 year is incredible. The amount of people, it's actually people are listening and they're aware of it. And even the press, even the Daily Mail, which I despise, had a whole thing about they're accepting now that climate change is real, and they're also accepting that we're being poisoned by these billion-dollar businesses, corporations, and these fast fashion companies and the super brands. It's all coming out now. So even like mainstream media that would poo-poo it for years are now accepting that all of what we're talking about is real. So we're no longer the nutcases. The same way that Prince Charles was an idiot for talking to plants 30 years ago and setting up organic, Dutchy Organics. The guy was millions and millions, years ahead of everyone else. It's all coming and it's all happening. And let's just keep spreading the word. The most important thing I think we have to do is make it fun. Because if we're just going to, like Katie said, if it's just the statistics and make it clear and simple and make it fun, and people, we will find millions of people, be like the Pied Piper. We'll have millions of people following us. It's going to be great. I have to run. I'm really sorry. I have to run, and I'll follow this later, but it was lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Well, you've beautifully led us into our next segment, because I'm going to talk to Anna and Ryan about how we make it fun. And what I love there is this concept that we are no longer the nutcases. I think that's what Katie was also talking about 10 years ago. Maybe this stuff was on the niche. We were the edge walkers, and this is coming into the mainstream. And there's something beautiful that you left us with.
Thank you. Well,
exactly. We've got to get there.
Follow this later. Take care. Bye-bye.
Look after yourself. And Stuart, I loved how he invited us to think that there are some things we can remember that we knew already. We already know what it feels like to have favorite things that we treasure. That's instinctual. And so some of this culture change is actually about reminding us of things we already know. So Anna and Ryan, I am going to pass to you now. Anna, I'll introduce you first and ask you about your thoughts on this piece around how we influence culture, and then Ryan, and perhaps we can go from there. So Anna, I know that you work for the Equator Initiative, supporting rural communities, and you're really focused on thinking about local nature-based sustainable development. What else would you like people to know about your relationship to this culture work? And what do you want to pick up on that we've heard already when you answer the question, how are you interested in influencing culture in your work?
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you so much for the question. It's a pleasure to be here. So, so through the Equator Initiative is this program that I lead in UNDP, and really what we do, we work to recognize and support local and indigenous communities that use sustainable practices to achieve sustainable goals while preserving biodiversity. And so, excuse me, through this work, shining a spotlight globally and nationally on these best practices, we have managed influencing culture and promoting shifts in values, particularly towards sustainability, towards inclusion and respect for indigenous knowledge. So we also have here Ryan with us, who is an indigenous Maasai young filmmaker who is part of our network at the Queer Initiative. And I think I will hear from him. I hope later he can share his perspective. But I think there are mainly, through the Queer Initiative, there are probably three main key ways in which we impact and we shape culture. And one is through a promotion of an inclusive inclusive values, and really like celebrating diversity, and spotlighting the solutions and the ways of lives of indigenous peoples. The second one is through strengthening of cultural heritage and cultural identity. And then finally, we do lots of work also on fostering gender equality and youth participation. And obviously we do this in many different ways, and primarily education and capacity building are really key for us to contribute to the development of cultures that value equity, that value environmental stewardship and social justice. But also we do lots of work on media and communications campaigns. So back to what Katie was saying earlier, we we need to connect through stories, and also Stuart said it, we need to keep pushing the message. So we really use communications and media storytelling to advocate for the inclusion of marginalized groups such as indigenous peoples and ethnic minorities are. And then obviously we also use all the United Nations mechanisms to support indigenous peoples in their advocacy efforts. So we have the United Nations on the permanent forum for indigenous issues, through which we help our communities, the communities in our network, to really have their voices heard and bring their issues to the table, and in such way help them advance on their agenda.
Thank you, Anna, for giving us that amazing kind of landscape analysis of all the levers that you're thinking about when you think about this dialogue that Katie mentioned. So Ryan, can you bring it to life from your perspective? So I know that you are a youth climate activist and you're a filmmaker. Where does influencing culture come to life in your work? And when Stuart talked to us about making sure that it's fun, tell me how that comes to life in the work that you do. Go for it, Ryan.
Well, hello there. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you.
Me.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. So greetings to all. Supoling. That is a Maasai greeting for hello. My name is Ryan, and I'm a 23-year-old. Just a minute, I'm trying to work on the Wi-Fi. Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, so
the
yeah,
audio
my
is
name
lovely.
Ryan,
Yeah.
and I'm a 23-year-old Maasai warrior, filmmaker, and an advocate for indigenous rights from Kenya. Well, it's an honor, honestly, to be a part of this important conversation regarding culture, sustainability, and the power of storytelling. For me, I'll just share a part of my life. Growing up as a young Maasai in Kenya, I never imagined I'd be standing here, honestly, and sharing our stories with the world. But truly, life has a funny way of leading us down an unexpected path. I want you to picture this, growing up as a young Maasai boy, eyes wide with wonder and holding a camera for the first time. That was me. And that moment, changed everything. Suddenly, I had a tool to capture not just images, but the very soul of my people and of our land. So I'll take you to a conservancy by the name Nashulai Maasai Conservancy. It's not just your typical wildlife park. It's a living and a breathing example of how humans and nature can coexist peacefully. We started documenting life there, and we showed how our community manages to live alongside the likes of lions and elephants without fences, or even conflict. And right then, people started paying attention. Other communities began asking, how can you do this too? And suddenly, our traditional knowledge wasn't just old ways, but rather it was a solution to modern conservation and its challenges. Um, yeah, to proceed, I've had again the privilege to document life here and showing how our community manages to coexist with wildlife without any conflict. There was this time where I found myself face to face with a very curious elephant bull. My heart was actually pounding and my camera was shaking. And at that moment, I captured, I captured a moment that really spoke volume about the delicate balance we maintain with these magnificent creatures. It's not just about wildlife anyway, but people as well. One of my most profound experiences was interviewing an elder by the name Mokompo, who's our senior spiritual leader of the Loiter Forest. This sacred forest holds generational assets and stories of the entire Maasai tribe. And through a base partnership called Rudy, Rudy means we are transitioning back. We are going back to our traditional ways of living. There we had a privilege of sharing the untold stories of the indigenous people, and we shed light on, the rich heritage and struggles through the powerful medium of film. That really allowed us to, it really allowed me to actually tell people the wild adventures we had with Rudy. So yeah, from then we decided to go to the forest. And now, if you haven't been there, this is an incredible sacred forest for us, the Maasai. And getting there, oh, it's not easy. There's no Google Maps. We had to rely on the old ways of finding our path. There are we were able to trek through this ancient forest, and it hit me, and I was like, this is what our ancestors experienced. We are here documenting medicinal plants. We are learning about sacred sites, and yeah, maybe just we expected. We came through a few unexpected animal encounters. But here's the thing that really got to me. We really did this traditional ceremony deep in the forest. And standing there, we were surrounded by these massive, beautiful trees, literally feeling so connected, to our ancestors. It was powerful, And from then, it really made me realize why what we are doing with Rudy is so important. And another thing that's really cool, seeing how this stuff really impacts our young people. When we went back home and shared these experiences, with photos and films that we did, the eyes of the people, the youth, it literally lit up. Everyone was so excited. They started seeing tradition in a whole new way. It's like they're discovering their own heritage. That's why I'm so excited about, that led me to be excited about the idea of setting up a film school right here in National Maasai Conservancy. Because I imagine if, let's say, we give our young people the tools to tell these stories themselves and to show the world who we really are.
I think I've lost Ryan's audio, but what a beautiful place to end, giving more people the tools to show who we really are. So I'm just going to pull out some of the lovely things that I heard Ryan share with us. And Katie, it's interesting how many of the threads you shared that they actually pick up on. So you called us to think about how ideas were spread using stained glass and these images that captivated people. And I think that's not dissimilar from what Ryan is talking about with the photographs and the films, helping people to reconnect to totally different ideas. I loved it when he said that when you show these images in the film, people's eyes lit up and they kind of thought about their tradition and their old heritage differently. There's so much there. Anna, if you could just summarize in a sentence or two, what impact do you think film has? So Ryan's talked about some really very specific examples of, you know, actually filming documentaries that have enabled him to rewalk the paths of ancestors, focusing on just the same wisdom that they would have been interacting with from medicinal plants and sacred sites, and then transforming these into films and stories that can be shared with others and help people reconnect. What's the magic of film when you're working with filmmakers like Ryan for you? Just a sentence or two on that kind of dialogue that you think film can open up.
Yeah, well, filmmaking is such a powerful, such a powerful tool, really, to document and share success stories and share local practices at the global level, and foster cross-cultural learning and replication of those best practices. So, obviously, you know, the work that Ryan does, that many youth do in the communities, really help amplify respect for the cultural wisdom that Indigenous peoples hold, and, you know, and the fact that those stories are told directly from the voices and from the lens of Indigenous peoples themselves. You know, it helps decolonize storytelling and really sends a very powerful, I think, genuine message to the world. So it's really crucial
Thank you,
what
Anna.
Ryan is doing.
And thank you for giving us that frame. I think at the beginning, Katie said, the power of media is when we can bring in voices that weren't otherwise included. Was that right, Katie? And what I'm hearing from Ryan is this piece that actually when you give people the tools to tell the stories themselves, that's when the magic happens. And you're saying also, Anna, that this distributes power differently, right? And
Exactly.
actually helps us to decolonize. I'm going to bring Jarvis back in. I know we're going to be talking now about kind of the broader role of media and culture and the kind of movement that OMMM is trying to create as we talk in our next segments around balance. So Jarvis, I wondered what your reflections were on those many themes and threads that have been so wonderfully begin to be woven by Katie, by Anna, by Stuart, and by Ryan.
Wow, I mean, gosh, I mean, first of all, thank you all, everybody that's bit of feedback here. 1 second. Turn the volume down. Okay, thank you. I mean, the beauty of what we've got here today in terms of people that have shown up is that they're all people that I've met in my life, that talk sense, that speak truth, that care about a changing world, that care about the information and the values that they live in the world. And so it was just so beautiful to be hanging out with people that I've met and know and love, and just think, wow, this is such knowledge. You know, imagine if we turned on the telly and, you know, instead of the 6 o'clock news, that we got just like, you know, streams of consciousness and wisdom that came from people like this lot. I mean, you know, the world would be a completely different place. So thank you for all thinking, speaking, and being beautiful.
Thank you, Jarvis.
So, Charlotte, thank you for that segment. I mean, culture is such an important part of, you know, the world that we live in today. It's become a bit of a buzzword, a bit like purpose was a while ago, and a bit like sustainability was a bit before that. And, you know, I'm not really into all these buzzwords, but what I do know is that, you know, culture, if we can remember the truth of culture and not these man-made conceptualized concepts, you know, like this woke movement that's going on at the moment, which I just think is ridiculous. And you know what I mean? It's like, let's just focus on sacred culture, real culture. And that brings me very, very nicely to, well, I mean, I'm blessed to have the founder of OMMM coming on with us next, Michelle Narciso, who I met, funnily enough, at COP 28 in Dubai, of the most random place in the world. But, you know, we both happened to be there. I remember I was presenting on a panel through a mutual friend that we've got. And I sat down afterwards, and, you know, this kind of beacon of light kind of floated over and sat down and just kind of beamed a smile of exactly what Mindahi and Joadine were talking about, just love. And you know what, we just connected, and we've actually, you know, nearly spoken, if not every week, nearly every day since. And you know, this is one of the most amazing ambassadors for change that I've happened to have met in the recent times. You know, she's an incredible person, introduced me to the Earth Elders. So thank you, Michelle, for, you know, linking us up with Mindahi and Geraldine and all the other ambassadors, which I am now one of, and Katie is now one of. And so
I will wait with bated breath to hear from Michelle later. But
we
now
will indeed.
have it'll be a big build up, Michelle. It's going to be lovely when we can hear you. And now I have the total excitement of welcoming a good friend and co-founder of mine, Tess, and the incredible Kai, and an amazing new discovery of a human, which is Ben. And we are coming together to explore this wonderful theme of balance. So what we're all going to be asking each other in the next segment is what needs balancing in society and why. So we're going to start with Tess, who's going to talk to us really about the role of our bodies, the role of gender. Tess is a great friend of mine. She's a non-binary intersex founder, a leadership strategist and advisor. What I love about working with Tess, especially in our magic on Uncomfortable.love, is that she is not afraid to be confrontational. And Tess's work is now focused on how pioneering economies can transform and transition in uncertainty. So Tess, what would you like to speak to today on this question of what you believe needs balancing in society and why? Kick us off when you're ready.
Thanks so much, Charlotte, for the introduction. And I'm really glad to be here with you all guys, and new friends, old friends. And I'm reading actually a piece which I wrote 2 years ago, but I'm reading it again in this context. It's 4 minutes piece, and it's actually called on not being balanced. The Swiss gender fluid and non-binary Kim de l'Horizon wrote in their debut novel Blutbuch about the inimitable act of liberation of those things we take on unquestioned. Sexes, bodies, traumas, class affiliations. Choosing between paternal and maternal, the protagonist identifies more with the family's female history, a story of neglect, repression, stubbornness, and resistance. These inherited wounds of the past underpin the protagonist's non-binary existence. But they are also plagued by a gnawing sense of self-doubt. They ask, what narratives are there for a body that defies conventional ideas of gender? Yet Kim prefaces the first chapter of his novel with a quote from Tabitha Rezer, "The wound is the land of healing," setting their focus less on radical self-exposure than on care, repair, and healing, where language becomes as fluid as bodies, identities, and nature. It sweeps you along in fluidity. So let's take a few minutes looking at your own wounds, inhabited or not, of binary thinking, polarization, or paradox. Those exquisitely big, uncomfortable conversations. The existential ones. The ones where we tend to bury our heads in the sand about it. To not be so easily boxed and categorized is a quality that seems to be hard to accept for most people. People have a hard time dealing with fluidity and things that don't fit into their boxes. They are afraid of anything unbalanced, the anti-fragile. We live in societies ridden with the fear of the unclear, the non-normative, the fear of change, the inability to keep up with change, and the fear of not knowing that lures us into a boxed and binary thinking. Ironically, it's exactly the non-binary, the unclarity, the glitch, the instability, the change, the not knowing, radically embracing strangeness, curiosity, liminality, complexity, flexibility, to be with yourself, to constantly evolve, that teaches you to hold, live, stay, and not run from paradox, contradictions, mystery, and your own wounds. to seek the flow between polarity and depolarization, the ability to integrate paradox, where when everything is open, we seek boundaries, where when everything is bound, we see things open, where we might see too many or not enough boundaries, where through dancing with polarity, we become our integral self, not anymore determined by oppositional juxtapositions, but integrating. The leader and the follower, the learner and the teacher, male and female and queer, humans and metaverse and ecoverse, polycrisis and polyrealities, leading and seeding and healing. And then we just sit there with the discomfort together, whining about how uncomfortable it is, allowed, deranged laughter, allowed, compassion, agenda-free witnessing, allowed and encouraged. And where we need more spaces to be uncomfortable and ask those questions that don't have binary, ready-made, simple, balanced answers. Spaces where we can witness each other as we tremble together before the maddening reality of this climate emergency. The speed of change will drastically increase, and the behavior of the natural world and our own response will be increasingly erratic, where non-binary mutability and adaptation are the crucial survival skills for the instability ahead, where you have to be adaptable to be fully alive, where by being, thinking, and leading non-binary, we prepare ourselves and our wounds to transform, where we learn to accept ourselves fully, becoming aware of our impermanent fluid identity and advocating others to also do so. I know we need those spaces, where we will be healed by those spaces. Yet, where those who fail to flow, shift, change, adapt, and evolve will freeze, fail, and fall away.
Tess, thank you. Oh, I'm just going to repeat back some of the things that really came through as you shared. When dancing with polarity, we become our integral selves. I loved it when you shared that we should be radically embracing strangeness. And it's in the glitch and it's in the instability that the magic happens. And this fear of not knowing is maybe what keeps us in our boxes. So in a moment, Tess, I'm going to be bringing Kai, another collaborator of ours, into this space. But if you were going to share in your own words, Tess, what you think needs balancing in society in reference to what you've shared, you've mentioned kind of balancing self-doubt, you've mentioned this kind of binary of thinking about gender in these two terms, and you've instead focused on care, repair, healing, and a fluidity around our bodies. Tell us, Tess, what you think needs balancing in society and why.
Yeah, I was instantly thinking about that. Even nature is not balanced. So I think it's really wise to think about where can we shift away from balance or integrate multiple ways. I read this morning there was a German scientist and he developed a scale which has not 2 scales but 3 one. So that means that balance is always not just a binary thing. It's a pathway of different things coming together. So I think we need to balance the different views we have about this world, about nature, about diversity, about gender, about professions, about everything what we see. We need to find out how we can hold multiple ideas and conception at the same time. And that balance is much more difficult than a binary one of a male or female or us well as them.
I love this concept of actually, what if there were 3? What if it wasn't just 2 up and down? Maybe how much that always limits us. What do you think would change, Tess, if we freed ourselves from that binary?
I think it is exactly what happening right now. I mean, there are lots of hate or affrontations against binary, against the non-binary, against trans, against these voices, and this is more like a. I think we need to step through that, and it will be becoming much more even in the next years to come. But I think it will help us. I think we really need forefront companies, activists, business leaders who will stand up for alternatives, going beyond the business usual balance. So in that way, I predict it will be both. It will be both new things rising up next to the dominant system, and it will also become one big mesh of amalgamation. Everything moves together and shreds itself towards new forms. So I think balance is probably something more of the past. I would say we need to look for it.
I love that. Maybe we're actually moving towards something that we wouldn't recognize as balance. Kai, I'm going to bring you in. For people who don't know Kai is a grower, a gardener, a designer, a teacher, a poet, a healer, a doula, a campaigner, many things all at once. Kai, what comes to your mind when you think about this question of balance in society and why? And maybe you actually want to also question whether it's balance we're seeking or what Tess has just evoked about this kind of new amalgamation. Kai, tell us what comes to your mind on this question.
Thank you. That's a good intro. I should have you introducing me more often. But what comes to mind for me is this dance to and from homeostasis, as opposed to this idea we have of it being, which I really appreciate about what Tess is saying, that we have this idea of focus that focuses on the extremes, on this or that, here or there. And I think of balance more as that dance from that state of homeostasis, that regulated state, between, from that place and back to it, and that place and back to it. And so, and homeostasis regulation, that looks different every time. You've heard me talk about seasonality and cycles and patterns and rhythms, and with seasons, seasons look differently. Autumn this year and autumn next year looks very different. What we have here, rainy season and not rainy season, it looks different every year depending on a myriad of factors. So I think this idea we have of like a static, rigid state of here or there is false. It requires us to categorize, and that makes it easier to sell us stuff, doesn't it? But if we're moving away from selling and buying stuff, another binary, we find that there's a lot going on in between. So I'm more curious about cycles and seasons and rhythm and patterns as an approach to balance, as a way to understand balance, as opposed to focusing on the extreme ends and then imagining that the center point is what we are moving towards. It just doesn't make sense for the most part.
Thank you, Kai. So maybe moving away from this idea of rigid stasis to and from, and actually starting to conceive of everything unfolding as a bit of a dance. Thank you, Kai. I'm going to bring in Jarvis because I know he wants to talk about this in the context of nature, and you've just invited us to think of ourselves as part of seasons and cycles and that unfolding shape. I love the fact that you're thinking more about patterns. Jarvis, tell me what that brings up for you when you think about nature. And I'm going to later go to Ben, who'll talk about it from our kind of internal mental health. But Jarvis, what does it feel like to you when we're really thinking about balance in nature, and what Kai said about this dance and actually abandoning the rigid idea of stasis and thinking more about cycles and seasons?
Lovely. Thank you. I mean, firstly, thank you, Kai and Tess. Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd quite like to go what Tess said first, because when she was talking about, you know, the kind of non-binary, what immediately popped up in my consciousness was this thing that we call the yin yang, or the polarization of polarities, the kind of male female, the day and night, the masculine, the feminine, and it reminded me that my practice has always been about the point between two extremes. So it's like the golden mean, which is this, you know, Aristotle, Plato, kind of spiritual philosophy, or yeah, I think it maybe spiritual is not the correct word, but certainly a philosophical approach. And it reminded me of, you know, what I try and do when I think about balance is live the spiritual and quote unquote the physical, even though we're not physical beings, and I think that, you know, that point between two extremes is where we find balance, right? So when you're looking at nature, or when you're looking at you know, when you're looking at the point between, sorry, Tess, actually you see yourself as they, actually, which is my point. So you see yourself as both. You see yourself as in want of a better word, the yin and the yang, and to me that's a really healthy position to be. Now when you look at that in yoga, yoga means union, and it's the union between mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. But of course, we have no sense of the spiritual, but it is the balance of that union. And then you can look at it as the masculine and feminine, and then it's the balance of that which creates a third. So I think in every equation there is a third. The third is often the point between two. So that's my understanding of balance, right? If we can get balance, it's the point between the two extremes, which I think is really important. So because in most spiritual scriptures, it talks about yin and yang, it talks about balance in many, many ways. I believe that because we are so heavily weighted towards being human, we've lost our connection to perhaps what is more true. And that could be spiritual, it could be an evolution of consciousness, etc. So if we take nature as an equation, yeah, we've lost our concept or balance or relationship with nature, because the information that we were born into has kept us separate from it, so we can actually live in an economic system, this kind of monetary system that makes the world go round. So that's kept us disconnected. So balance for me is a dance. It's you know, if you remember the first time you rode your bike, or those of us that have been lucky enough to experience, you know, sailing a boat, and finding that point between the two extremes where you are just gliding, you are just in the zone. Surfers will talk about it, you know, climbers will talk about it. A lot of extreme sports that are out in nature will talk about it. If you are not in the zone, you are going to crash, and you are going to, you know, hurt yourself. And I think that's what's happening right now on the planet, is we are not living a balanced way, even in the simplicity of masculine, feminine, you know, relationship within ourselves. Forget about anything external. We both are born into a certain body, but we have a male and female energy running through us, and therefore even managing that, I think, is the ultimate key to balance. So, you know, I love that. I love the you know, everything that's been talked about. And what I really am hoping to practice much more deeply is not only trying to live it myself, but trying to teach others how to live it also. And that, I think, begins with balancing your addiction to the outside world, going within, and really getting in contact with your inner space, your inner self, your inner ecosystem, your own kind of spiritual essence, which is completely non-binary. It just is. And then once you've done that, you may begin to balance your existence in the physical and the non-physical.
Jarvis, oh, so much. I kind of want to bring Tess back in just to hear your comments, Tess, on that piece around whether what Jarvis is speaking to of this kind of third offering is the same as what you were talking about when you were referencing that German philosopher with this kind of this third way. Does that Does that resonate for you? Jarvis is kind of encouraging us to maybe think of being between, of being both yin and yang. Is that something that you would echo? And Ben, I'm then going to take it on to you to talk to us about where you see our kind of mental health and relationship with balance. So Tess, is there anything you wanted to build on or reflect on or challenge from Jarvis?
I totally can resonate with you, Jarvis. I mean, for me, it's you know, the small gray scales between sunset and sunrise when we go out, and where it's neither a fixed point of it. So I think and non-binary is also an expression that it's neither fully female or fully male. It's not in the middle. So there's these shades between, or the colors in between. So I think that's really good. And I also like to weave in what Kai said about cycles and seasons. I mean, it might be that in the future we will have maybe only 2 seasons in a year. Maybe we have a long autumn and a long winter. So even that will change, but it's always between expansion and retraction, and that's just normal, and there's something in between.
Thank you, Tess. Yeah, what is between this expansion and retraction? Kai, I think we might come back to you as we close, but Ben, can you bring us into the worlds that you're thinking about when you think about mental health and where this comes into being? For people who don't know Ben is an Oscar shortlisted South by Southwest winning producer. He's worked on, I think, over 400 episodes of TV, and he's now really thinking about the world of mental health. Tell us how you've come to this, Ben, and what it is that you're thinking about when you think about balance. I see you was muted right now.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
No,
So much of,
I can hear you now.
Okay. I mean, so much of what we think about in terms of mental health, it goes unseen, right? It can be described as invisible. And so when we talk about balance, I think we get used to this way of going about things where we assume, we make assumptions rather than ask, and then asking questions becomes this kind of daunting, or challenging reality. And there's many areas where if we make an assumption and that assumption is incorrect, it means everything that we do after that automatically becomes incorrect, right? That's like if someone says a 90-degree angle looks right, doesn't look like a square. And so I think we get used to that because these things go unseen, and everyone has a journey with their mental health that's immaterial of having a diagnosis, right? Or having something that needs clinical attention or heavy daily care. But when we assume, there's also something that happens where we end up trivializing people's experiences. And that also ties back into assuming what their experience is, right? So just a quick example, I have complex PTSD that is part of my disability and part of my mental health experience. And when I've addressed that informs the lens that I view things through, I've had a lot of people try, and instead of asking questions and stirring dialogue, they go towards the assumption, and the assumption is, well, I've gone through difficult things too, therefore I can meet you on the same level. And I find that in everything we're discussing here, if we lead by assumptions rather than questions, many of us will be under the assumption that we are on the same level and that we are talking about the same things when we're not. We're actually not being thorough. And if we're not really stimulating an environment that's about encouraging people to be thorough, then we wonder why people aren't better informed, or why people are so easily impacted by things like propaganda or misinformation. And so I think it all comes back to that, really, is our mental health journey, is how do we how do we open up people, and back to things that Tess was saying, right? I think that also taps into how do we really get people to appreciate vast perspectives, and to not look at especially anything that is a spectrum as about being a part of a conversation that requires winning, right? There's everyone
Mm.
forms a take, and then every conversation becomes about winning, and it's a competition. So so I think that the real ask around mental health is how can we get people to appreciate vast perspectives, and then hopefully that allows us to have better conversations, whether they are comfortable or uncomfortable.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ben. Oh gosh, I'm going to bring Kai in because something you've stirred there makes me want to see how you and Kai might explore this together. But I think what you've kind of asked us to think about is many strands of this piece, Ben. And I suppose Tess left us on this question, this idea of actually, is there this kind of constant expansion and retraction? Is that part of the journey? You then used that word journey about our own mental health. Kai, when you talked about seasons and cycles earlier, how do you think about that when you think about our kind of mental health journey? And Ben was asking, how do we stop assuming that we are the same and start asking deeper questions about that? Where does seasons and cycles come into your understanding of mental health, Kai? Oh, I'm not getting Kai's audio.
Can you hear me now? Yeah? Okay, good. So I will bring in a bit of a reframe with balance and think of balancing. And I think my struggle with balance as a point between two comes in that I think of balance more as a verb than a noun, so that balance is, it stops being this place that we're trying to get to, this in-between place that is not too much of this and too much of the other, but is instead completely all of these extremes that we consider, completely them, whether in potential or in actualization. And so how I mean that is, I come in a female body. I am 100% male. I'm 100% female in my potentiality, but I embody a female. I come with a female body. Does that mean I do not have the potential? I was born with the potential to have been male right at the beginning. I carry that within me completely. And so when I reframe the idea of balance from a location to a process, a continuous process, another way to look at it is life and death. Our bodies are completely living and dying at the same time. These two considered extremes are occurring all at the same time. We're not swinging from one to the other and therefore passing across a center point. It's happening all at the same time in our bodies. And so with the same thing with cycles, we have in cycles you have more pronounced points, but our planet has the potential for all of those throughout the year. It's just that certain aspects are more actualized at certain points because it contributes to homeostasis, to the regulation of the planet. And so thinking of bringing it back to mental health, I think I have found that from my own experience and in the work that I do and from friends and family, that part of the struggle with mental health has been that we have this idea of what normal is supposed to look like, what a normal person is supposed to look like, and then any deviation from that is off balance. And now even science is finding that normal is so many different ways. The brain expresses in so many different ways that are constantly shifting depending on our cycles, where we are in the cycle of our life, what the environmental factors are, and those are constantly shifting. Those have a seasonality to them, and so we're also seasonal beings. And I think when we think of balance as an act, as a verb and then think of mental health from that perspective, then I feel we can approach ourselves and each other with more grace, with more kindness, with more generosity, because there's a sense of, okay, there's a potential for the extremes, like it's gone, it's shit's hit the fan, or there's also the potential for peace, for grace, for whatever normal is for that person in that season. And because that's constantly shifting, then we can allow ourselves to also shift with that. So yeah, that's a little jumbled for me, but that's that's where it takes me.
That was beautiful, Kai. Thank you so much for exploring that. And I want to get Ben's thoughts on what you just shared there about actually maybe recognizing that processes are happening at the same time, living and dying happening in our bodies at the same time, and acknowledging this idea that we're not just seeking balance as a destination, it's actually an ongoing verb, and there isn't this idea of normal. Ben, how do you think our views, our feelings, even the assumptions we make that you mentioned earlier about mental health would change if we didn't think of balance as this destination or of this concept of normal?
Oh, I mean, I love that as a descriptor. Yeah, an example, because I personally don't like to think of things as destinations. It's um, yeah, not just in that, I guess, guise of, oh, we must appreciate the journey, right? But in a lot of cultures, we're taught that we should always be forging ahead and focusing on what's next. And even when we do have victories, big or small, even then we're still taught, okay, what's next, right? So so much is about this destination thinking, and and I think it's very quickly to kind of dehumanize any kind of present nature of where we are and what we're doing. And I mean, you see that in work environments, especially, right, where even people who admit they feel like they do feel good about the places they work and the work they're doing, but when it gets down to it, most people will admit they kind of just feel like they're a number or a cog in the machine, because the focus is always what's next. And I think regarding mental health, uh, that's a very hard reality to embrace, because I think anyone who deals with anything that you can kind of give a name to, right, or a strong descriptor to, that impacts your psyche and you know the way you think and function. Um, I don't think it's ever like this. It's never just a straight line. It's very much a pendulum swing, you know. Um, and a lot of it you'll never hear about. You'll Most people are not willing to be candid and open and transparent about their conditions, both because there's a lot of shame attached to it, as if it's akin to complaining, or it's akin to having flaws, and if we have flaws then we can't talk about them when we all have flaws, and you see how that becomes a vicious cycle very quickly. But then also the flip side of that is that it's weaponized against people. We know that it's weaponized singularly, it's weaponized in society, in our working world, so people are heavily de-incentivized to just be honest about what our journeys are. And so all of us are given very little reasons to be kind of brutally honest about what the journey is. And so focusing on the destination is, yep, everything's going to be great. And again, in the end, we're all going to have, amazing victories in that destination. But let's just not talk about how we got there. Let's just not talk about the fact that we all need each other. We need community. No one gets there alone. Not really. We all need some form of community, or we build off work that people who have come before us, have done, right, laid groundwork before us. Um, so yeah, I think that is just such a huge place that we need to visit and revisit um, together. Yeah, because there is no destination unless we can, not a good one, unless we can really be more present and talk about you know, the reality of the journey as we go along, I guess.
Thank you, Ben. You've also just kind of woven in, I think, a bigger challenge to another binary, which is maybe this binary of independence, that we are this kind of isolated silo, and instead you've talked about actually what about our relationship to our communities and our mental health and our own experience as life as part of that kind of interdependence, which I think is also what Kai was talking to in terms of where these things fit. We're actually all interdependent, which I think is a lovely frame to put around thinking about our mental health, actually, rather than just a silent destination we're aiming for as an individual, but a bit more of an interdependent journey, which I think is also perhaps what Jarvis was weaving in terms of thinking about yin and yang and the blends of these things. And Kai was saying we have this potentiality in all of us to be so many different things. So that really helps me think about kind of mental health more as a much wider, expansive piece, just like we heard in our opening session, being part of our bigger family. I am kind of wondering, and maybe this is a question to you, Ben, and to Tess, just briefly before we wrap, and I'll bring Jarvis back in. But Ben, you talked about how at the moment people are maybe wanting to present their mental health journey as a straight line, when actually it's much more of a pendulum swing. But right now, people have a nervousness often to talk about their experiences for fear that it might be akin to, you say, complaining or to failing. I would love to ask maybe the three of you just to each share a few words on what you think would have to change for us to be more open about life not being this straight line. What do you think might change to encourage us to be more open about it being this moving dance? Ben, I'll go to you first, and then maybe to Tess.
I think I mean, it's not a short answer to that one, but I would say the first example I would give is one that comes from our working world, and it comes from not us embracing this idea that we can't place the onus on any one person, right? To be responsible for how these conversations can be had and where people feel comfortable sharing. And my short example is companies or any place that says they have an open door policy, right? An open door policy makes it seem like you are welcome. Everyone is welcome here. You are welcome to bring your concerns, your stressors, right? You know, anything you might have going on with you that can be talked about. Welcome. You are welcome here, right? When that's what it's made to look like. But really, the onus is on the individual to come to that door. And maybe it's not the right time to come to the door. Maybe that other person or whoever doesn't happen to have time for you at that moment, because there's not a two-way commitment there. There's not a two-way commitment of time, of appreciation and being present. It's the full onus is placed on one person. And so I like that as a descriptor, because that's a big element that has to change. And that's not true just for you know, the working world. That's true in any social dynamic we have. It has to be a two-way representation and conversation. We can't, if we just expect people individually to be like, okay, is it okay now? What about tomorrow? What about, right? It, like, when is the right time? Because if it comes down to that, it will never be the right time. Right? No one will ever, unless there's an assuredness that it's safe. Until that happens, right? It's we won't get to the place that we want.
Thank you, Ben. So you've talked to us about dialogue, making sure there's a two-way dialogue, which brings us back to actually what Katie was sharing earlier. Tess and Kai, I'm going to ask you to come in, but perhaps a little bit more shortly so I can go to Jarvis. But Tess, was there anything you wanted to add on what you think will help us move away from this straight line thinking to actually being more open about the pendulum swing that is our experience? What would you add?
I mean, three-letter word, mud, dirt. I mean, no mud, no lotus, we know all of that. Mud has healing properties, so we need to learn how we can go through the physical and metaphysical mud we're experiencing, and how can we be more into mud? I mean, it's a beautiful thing to be in the mud. I mean, but also how do we transcend our own mud? So I think mud is the thing for me. 2025 is all about mud.
Oh, I can just know Jarvis is going to get right into that when I come to you in a moment, Jarvis. Yes, thank you. Yeah, how do we remember that it's beautiful to be in the mud? Gorgeous, Tess. What a lovely offering to leave us with. Kai, was there anything you wanted to add in just around this piece of what will encourage us to be open to this constant dance and to make it more normal for us to really honor that it is a dance and a process? Kai,
I would say just completely undo this idea that us and the earth are separate entities, that we are something other than nature, that we actually are nature. We are expressions of the earth. We are expressions. We are life. And I think returning to that I think there's something really primal in remembering that I get the sense will click a couple of other things into place.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Kai. So maybe we are that mud. If I can close us there. Thank you so much, Jarvis. I'm sure you are absolutely brimming with ideas and reflections you want to bring in as you take us to our next segment. But Ben, Kai, Tess, thank you so much for opening up so many different avenues in this conversation and for making me think about balance in a whole new way. A verb, and let's move on from this destination and embrace the dance. Thank you, Jarvis.
Yeah, love that. Yeah, thank you all. I mean, I'm so blessed to have such amazing friends that have showed up for this, for this broadcast, and thank you. I honestly, genuinely appreciate it. We're all, in many ways, we're using different strands, different streams of consciousness to connect to the same thing, right? It's like all religions, that they all lead to the same place. It just depends on which journey you take, and that's the magnitude and magnificence of this earth walk that we've got, that we all do have such a huge playground to play in. Like, we can be this, we can be that, we can do this, we can do that, and so it's amazing. And I love the be in the mud, because I tell you what, my kids love being in the mud. And then as an adult, you kind of like, you want to be less in the mud, and actually, no, let's roll around more in the mud. So yeah, no, thank you for that. And dancing with life is something that I try and tell myself every day, whatever's going on. There's always going to be drama. There's always going to be politics. There's always going to be issues in the world. There's always going to be people starving, children being hurt. That's all going on. But what I got from the top end of the session with Mindahi and Geraldine is that perhaps, just perhaps, it's meant to be like it is, so that we can grow and learn and experience ourselves, in another field that has learned from this field, and maybe that is part of the new dawn that the guys were talking about earlier. So I'm open to that. Bring it on. Just may it be abundant and joyful and full of fun. Thank you, guys. We love you so much. I'm going to try and get back to Michelle now. So Michelle, I'm hoping that you are going to be with us. But Ben, Kai, Tess, love you. Thank you so much for the wisdom that you brought to this session. Charlotte, thank you for holding space. Do stick around, because we're going to hopefully have a chant from the venerable Lama Tashi, who happened to be the Dalai Lama's artist in residence, is going to be joining us in about 15 minutes. So, Michelle, I'm hoping now that we are able to hear you, and you're going to be able to say exactly what you said earlier, but this time to an audience that can actually hear what you're saying. Oh no, we can't. I can't hear you anyway. Maybe if anyone is in the chat, maybe they could let me know if they can hear Michelle. No. Oh man, this is just extraordinary, and I'm really not sure what is going on. Michelle, if you go down to, oh, she's gone. I was going to say, if you go to Mike, I was going to try and talk you through. So, well, look, I'll carry on rambling for a minute. Charlotte, if you are around, do please come back and share the space with me if you are. But one of the reasons for bringing this, oh, let's see, Michelle, you're back. No, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me? Because I can't hear you. Okay. Yay, you're here. You're in.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
I'm wondering if I need these headphones because you know what? I'm going to keep them on just in case. I hear you coming through my laptop.
Yeah. Okay.
Yay! I'm so
Yeah.
happy
Oh,
to be here.
fantastic! Absolutely fantastic.
Oh my gosh, Jarvis! What an incredible conversation.
Right.
And I am. My heart is so full. It's I know you're going to ask me what is OMM. You know, the ultimate "Who am I?" question for a business that I always kind of hate to answer because I feel like us as humans, we're so focused on putting things into categories and into boxes so that we can use our mind to calculate, how do I think about something? And really what I loved about this was there's so many different aspects to this conversation, and it's very much what you said before, which is, we're all getting to the same point. It's all of these different pieces, and ultimately what we're trying to remember is the interconnectedness of everything, right? Of mind, body, spirit, when it comes to our mental health. And one of the things we really need to have right before we can get people to care about the larger picture, the interconnectedness between, us and our brothers and our sisters, and, and obviously how important that is. And, again, I hear these conversations and I feel so blessed to be accepted into so many different groups where these powerful conversations are happening and there's this amazing wisdom being shared. And I keep thinking I want to record all of this so that I can share this with everyone, right? Because there's such powerful tidbits that I'm hearing. And then the interconnectedness to Mother Earth, to our planet, to our home, to the cosmos, to everything that is, because as Mindahi and Geraldine so beautifully said in the beginning, not even just that we are nature, but we are beyond just being human beings. And just, we're here, we're having a human experience, but we're here and we're learning, and it means being in the mud, and it means finding balance, and it means understanding that things aren't linear.
Please talk into your headphones, Michelle, just so we can hear you properly. That's it. Yeah.
Is this better?
That's better. Into the mic. Thank you.
I start getting into my heart and I lose. But this is such a beautiful conversation. So before you ask me what OMM is, OMM is, I struggle to call it an organization or a platform. It's a reminder of the interconnectedness of everything. It's this desire to reconnect people to one another and to themselves, so that we can live in a better world, a better, safer world for us, more, for our children. We talked about leaving a beautiful place. I'm a mom of two. My co-founder Maria was a mom of two. She's now a mom of three. She just had a baby a month ago, and this is our home, and we're having this experience here. And so I'm doing everything I can to take some of these beautiful ideas and bring them mainstream, and to bring them to people who are, that care, but are perhaps unaware of ways that they can connect and that they can contribute to the whole, right? Because I think that that's our ultimate mission is to being in service of the whole. I'm sorry if I've jumped ahead of any of your questions, Jarvis. I'm just so excited by everything I'm hearing. It was such a beautiful conversation.
Yeah, no, it is. It is beautiful, and thank you for sharing that. No, I mean, look, I know is quite difficult in a sense to articulate because it feels to me like what you are offering, and certainly what I connected with, and why I'm part of because it's interesting because it feels like it doesn't have a structure. in the old paradigm. And what do I mean by the old paradigm? I mean this, polarized society, this bureaucratic, dogma, etc. And whereas what you brought to the table was this is, I call it a mass mobilizing movement full of magic and music and mystery and mysticism and all the M's that we can think of, for Michelle and Maria and and any other M's we can bring to the party, right? But the reason why I want people to connect with it is because if we are all able to be part of something that doesn't have any edges, that doesn't have any entries or exits, it just is, then that's a really simple thing for people to connect with. Anybody can show up, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, but be part of something that is perhaps an expression of how life could be rather than how it might be currently. I don't really know I'm going with this, but what I really want to do is just identify that for me has allowed me to be part of something that is not about me. It's about the we, which is what Mindahi and Geraldine were speaking about earlier. And you've manifested that. You and Maria have grounded that into this reality. You've turned it from an idea and a consciousness and an energy into a thing that we are part of now. So how does that feel to you? Like, you've got these amazing ambassadors around you. Maybe talk a little bit about those and talk a little bit about what has attracted so far, and also what we might be getting up to this year. Next year, should I say.
Yeah. I feel really frustrated with language sometimes because I don't think that there's really anything that can describe the journey that this has been. But just for 2-second background, I worked in media for one of the biggest media conglomerates in the world for over 2 decades. My background is in, finance, accounting, strategy, and during the time of, and raised Catholic, not overly religious, like to think of myself as a good person and just sort of going through the routine, right? And then also working for a media company, a huge media company, was driving a lot of the messages that are out there. And then and also for reference, I'm from New York City. I live in an area called Hell's Kitchen. Grew up in the concrete jungle, never connected with nature, didn't really know much about it other than when I went on vacation. It was a beautiful backdrop for pictures and it was really beautiful. I never thought about the intelligence of nature. I never thought so much about the infinity of the universe. As a Catholic, I never thought about, energy and like multiple lives and all of that. And then the pandemic hit, and suffice to say, I had a personal journey where all of a sudden
We've got a bit of a mic issue again, Michelle. Just yep, that's better.
Yeah. Yes. And then all of a sudden, I did connect. One part of the journey was that one part of the journey was that my husband, who's from New Zealand, convinced me to go on an RV trip across the U.S., which went from 3 weeks to 9 months. And we visited 25 national parks in the U.S. at that time, and it was beautiful. But what I will say is that in that journey, I connected, like I really, really connected. I saw billions of stars. I saw the magnificence of nature and how Mother Earth is the most beautiful, beautiful artist. I saw these huge trees that did everything they had to do, for 1,000 years and what they must have seen. And I realized that a lot of what we, prioritize in our daily lives are perhaps not the things we should be prioritizing. And that we're forgetting about that connection, and we forget that time is fleeting, and we're here to have this, this experience. And it was really powerful. And so I had an amazing job. It was really beautiful, and but I realized that I couldn't do it anymore. And so I left, and we started OMM. There's a lot of pieces to the story in between, but for me, OMM is very much about um, bringing a lot of the mainstream in too, the people who don't know all of this, this beautiful experience that they can have, and bringing them along for the journey, because it's amazing once you realize how beautiful it is when you realize that at the center of everything is love, and that there's nothing that feels better than it when you really feel love for yourself, love for others, love for your home. And so that's sort of my personal journey. And how do we do it? We do it by making people feel good. We want people to have fun. We want people to learn. We work with a network of ambassadors, who are people or missions who are incredible. You've heard some of them today. Lama Tashi is going to come in shortly, that are just incredible people who have, ancient wisdom, and we want to evolve them for modern times, and we want to share that knowledge, and we do that via, huge events. We do it by creating content, either socially or educational content. We do it by creating retreats. We do it by creating one-to-one. But the whole idea is that we just want people to connect. We want people to feel part of a community. We want people to feel loved, and we want people to have an opportunity to love others. So next year, we have a lot going on. we have we've produced 3 concerts in Times Square. One for Earth Day, and 2 for Peace Day, in collaboration with Good News Corp. And we're going to do that again this year. We're going to do Earth Day in April and Peace Day in September. We have the Peas Awards, Jarvis, which is your baby, that is going to be in its 15th or 16th year in June. And we're going to create a festival around that. We have an activation that we're going to do around COP30 in Brazil. We have our, some of our yogis that have created this My Temple spiritual lifestyle brand, they're creating beautiful pop-ups. And so look out for that. And then we have our beautiful Lama Tashi, who's coming on shortly, who is just everywhere you want him to be. He's just tireless and spreading his love and his good energy, and a lot of other things in between. But that's just a start.
Amazing, amazing, Michelle. Thank you so much. I know there's so much to say. For everybody that is watching, you can go to and you can, let me just show you the website, which should be coming up now. So it's OMMMpresents.com. And as you can see, connects ancient wisdom with modern wellness, empowering individuals to unlock their full potential, nurture their inner peace, and actively contribute to a more peaceful, connected global community. So that's why we're fully on board. But just to say, you can literally just add your details, join the movement, and you will get to find out all of the events that are happening next year. So I'm sure one of my team will just post the link in the chat. And I think, Michelle, that brings us really nicely to one of the, the founding ambassadors of the movement. I remember when you and I first met, and then you spoke to me about Lama Tashi, and meeting this person in the flesh was, I have to say, one of the most joyful meetings I've had in my life, let alone in recent years, because he's such a beautiful, humble monk, a Buddhist Tibetan monk, completely in service to keeping the Tibetan traditions alive, and does it with such joy and such such amazingness that he kind of awakened me to aspire to want to be a bit more Lama Tashi. So #be more Lama Tashi. Can we get Lama Tashi in? If I stop sharing the screen now. Michelle, thank you for sharing about welcome, Lama Tashi. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Jarvis and Michelle. How are you? Again, all of you sing.
I love your golden throne. That's amazing.
I met Eddie Murphy. Do you know that? Eddie Murphy?
You met Eddie Murphy?
Just kidding. He made the film The Golden Child. You know that?
He did indeed, yes.
I'm here in Orange County, and they have this house here. And there's the golden throne here. So I just use it.
I tell you what, it really suits you. It really suits you.
Seems like some karma here. Have a little. Have a
So
throw.
beautiful.
It's so funny, like a deer and all that. So deer is like in the Tibetan monastery, they have these two deers always, because Buddha gave his first teaching at the deer park in Varanasi in India.
Ah,
So it's
okay.
two deer here.
Beautiful. And you're on tour in America at the moment. I know you've been doing events for OMMM, and you've been at the My Temple, which is another two yogis that run My Temple, and you're out now just spreading. What are you doing? What are you doing out in the States before we go into a closing chant?
Here, California, I was here several times in the past. Also, I met Michelle here. So one of my events, and then that was wonderful meeting. Since then, I've been to New York several times and had some of the great performance venues like Carnegie Hall, Times Square, Biltmore Hotel, like that. So I'm very happy that these platforms help me, also my culture, Tibetan culture, to show in the global stage. So that was really, really, and then knowing Michelle personally, her family, and then I met Jarvis yourself, and then came to London, some of the great locations. So I felt very blessed to meet OMMM. And then even saying Om is like creating a good karma, you know?
Yes.
So I think Michelle is creating a very good karma all the way.
Yeah. Agreed. Thank you so much. So that's beautiful. Thank you, Lama Tashi. Michelle, we are going to ask Lama Tashi to end us with one of his chants. But is there anything, just some last words from you before we go into to Lama Tashi and some vibrations of sound? Would you like to just end with anything at all?
I just want to say thank you. And if any of this resonated with you, please definitely reach out and see how you can get involved. Love is always the answer. Love is the new currency. And so it's a new currency. Money and all those other stuff that'll sort itself out. But if we all connected on this vibration of love, we'd be in a much better place. So thank you, Jarvis, for all of this. This is beautiful.
Beautiful. Thank you. And just a reminder to everybody, and thank you. Love your mother was the theme. You know, love your mother. What does that mean to you? Is it the connection with the earth? Is it the person that gave you life? Is it the beginning of our, of our existence? What is that? But I think we all have a connection with mother. Michelle, thank you. Thank you to all our guests. Lama Tashi, we would love to hand over to you. Please do what you do, bring what you bring, and we will be available to receive your golden light. Be touched by your goldenness.
Yeah, I see it like a very auspicious for OMMM also, that I'm on a golden throne, like a symbol of prosperity. Because when we paint the mandalas, we always put like a 24-karat gold, and then these are like offerings to the like detachment, and then some kind of offerings to the Buddhas. Like people in Thailand, they put Buddha gold leaves on the face of the Buddhas. So these are like practicing detachment. So I've known OMMM and team for a long time. I'm here in LA now. So actually, the LA is very nice. I heard it is more like a kind of a media largest city. So for a Tibetan cause, I thought maybe this is great, like New York, both of these big cities. So I'm here to spend my rest of my time to work on my cause. So this way, if I live in Holland as well, but if I do something here, then I think the world knows about it, So that is like more purposeful. then in some words in German or Dutch, and my world cannot read it. So so that there are certain things which I'm here, and I met a lot of wonderful people. Lately, I have met some like also with Jayama. We met some of the very important people. Like I'm practicing mantras with Taylor Dane. So my brother is a monk, and he even heard that songs, "Looking into My Eyes" or something, that that kind of song. And then
Tell it from my heart. Tell it from my heart. Da, 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 da. Yeah, that one. A beautiful song.
yes, yeah, that was so interesting. And then I was now this place is very interesting. It's like over 500,000 official Vietnamese lives in this area, Santana. So there, they said it comes more than double because officially that's the count. So there are a lot of Buddhists in this area as well, and they just offered me this location here. Said I'm raising funds for my Tibetan temple and art space and a museum, and then they said yes, you can use this till you to raise your funds and then find a place. So I'm doing some monthly, creating some events. So it's an amazing space where I would like to invite OMM also to do something here. It has immersive possibilities and all that. Maybe like end of January, because now I'm doing something here, but maybe that's a bit too early. End of December, but maybe end of January or February, maybe we can do something like OMM presence, and all of us could do something. And then also 22nd of December, I have an event in Malibu, which I discovered lately that all the celebrities live there. So it was, so I'm all discovering lately everything. Even when Michelle asked, invited me to perform in the Carnegie Hall, I didn't know what is that. It was the largest platform, I realized. And then there was some drummers like Michael Jackson's drummer or something. And then there was Earth, Wind and Fire. I thought he was very good, but he was he was official. So that was very interesting. But in my world, they don't know. If I said to my monastic world, it's Earth, Wind, and Fire, and then they think it's the prayer flags, So, so we only know like Celine Dion or something, or Michael Jackson. So it's a very different world, but amazing. Coming up, I have some really good events, and I want to thank all my friends and Om and Jarvis, Michelle, all of you has helped me, and I look forward to some much more things that we can do together. I remember Bolivia, Ecuador, Brazil. I'm looking forward to all of these wonderful things to happen. Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. And we are going to be inviting you back to the UK in June. So you must break your American travels, providing it's all going smoothly, to come back and spend time with our people here. Lama Tashi, thank you so much. We do need to wrap up. So don't feel pressured by time, because it's absolutely fine. Sorry for those of you that thought we were ending at 3, but we've carried on a little bit longer. But let's end with a chant. Let us be blessed by Lama Tashi Nobu. And if you want to connect with Lama Tashi Nobu or On Presents or any of the other guests, do join On Presents, and we can make sure that we link you up with people through that channel. Thank you to all our speakers. Again, we love you. Thank you for bringing your time here on a Friday the 13th, which I think is an auspiciously lucky day as far as I'm concerned. So here we go, Lama Tashi. Please bring on the song.
Yes, I will recite the mantra of Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, music, and fine art, to eliminate ignorance desire, and hatred. So that is the mantra. Om Arabaza Na. So when we in the monastery and in the Tibetan schools, we recite this every morning to purify our speech. That is a wisdom. And I will recite that. Sangye Shodan, Sangye Sonam La Janjo Bardo Dane Kapsoja Dagi Jisoke Besanam Get Dola and Sangye Dobara Show, Semjen Hamja Dewa and the Vegu and Demba Semjen Hamja Dungeme Dewa that Mendeva you Semjen Hamja Yerin Chadani than the Tanyo and never you Chadon Kolo Guru Gebo Chendon Gebo some Kala Kandu de la de Metzumba Chere Sela Cha Selo. Chukenge maga kondo ka dosa chenge ola gen tuje chenge dola se jere se la cha selo jambe ya la cha selo Om Arambandana 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 Ege Sodola Yelo Om Arambandana Gewa de nyudo da jambaya la tugyo na drowa chikya maleva de sala gobara sho. May Buddha of wisdom, Manjushri, bless all of us, and may our activities be flourished to whole universe, to all sentient beings, to be free from sufferings, hatreds, and desires, and meet with the path to enlightenment. Om Arabazana. And our team here, Jarvis and all Om and all of you, may you all be happy with families and long life, good health and good spirit. Thank you.
Thank you, Lama Tashi.
You're very welcome.
Beautiful. And there we have it, the end of our session. Thank you all for joining. I love you lots and see you all soon.
Thank you. This Ben.